panel because they are my allies, and this conversation here today began at Odyssey Clayworks in Asheville, North Carolina. It is this conversation that we will share with you today, and these are our stories. Gender is defined by the Oxford Dictionary as the state of being male or female, typically used with reference to social and cultural differences rather than biological ones. Sex does not equal gender. Our current gender roles stem from post-war American idealism. Women who worked in factories and came to the aid of America in a time of war were forced to abandon their independence when the men came home. Women were told to become wives, mothers, and caretakers in order to restore the demographic disparity created by the vast amount of young men forfeited to the war effort. Femininity and femaleness is not valued in our society the same way as masculinity and maleness. To alter from these narrowly defined roles was an affront to the very meaning of the nuclear family. Homosexuals and feminists were often linked as an assault on family. They were deviants. Critics of a changing gender roles proclaimed that it would destroy social and economic stability. Uncertain sexual or gender display may well be one of the most destabilizing developments of the last half-century. While Facebook now has over 40 descriptions of gender variants, there are still only 2 options on most job applications and legal documents. Gender roles have changed, but there is still an underlying current that exists from which many of us suffer. The beliefs surrounding the notion of real men and real women reduce us to mere stereotypes. Advertisements, social media, religious doctrines define the narrow vision of gender norms to this day. That pink-blue dogma assumes that biology steers our social destiny. We have been taught that being born female or male will determine how we dress and walk, whether we will prefer our hair short or long and flowing, whether we will be emotionally nurturing or repressed. According to this way of thinking, masculine females are trying to look like men, and feminine males are trying to act like women. Gender violations are the crux of the many that refuse to acknowledge the colorful presentations and dualities that enrich who we are today. Gender politics is not new to the field in ceramics, so I must pay homage to a few of my clay heroes. Kathy King presents a feminist narrative on ceramic vessels. She is interested in mapping the ways popular culture not only reflects women's lives, but how it shapes them. She uses satirical humor, irony, and sarcasm in approaching gender and sexuality in her work. In this work, Sue, we see a woman with multiple names tattooed on her arms, then crossed out, tattooed over and a new name added. Sue is reminiscent of the 1944 Norman Rockwell piece, The Tattooist, in which a male sailor is getting a comparable tattoo. It demonstrates the double standard held against women. It's okay for men to play the field, to date around. They're simply sowing their oats and being boys. When women behave in the same fashion, their reputations are trampled upon. In Sue, the woman makes no apologies for who she is or what she has done. It reflects a powerful and positive display of female strength. Mark Burns addresses gender, sexuality, and eroticism in his funky, pulpy style. He uses pop cultural references to depict the myths of masculinity, queerness, and other controversial topics, including sex and religion. He talked about this subject when it was taboo to do so. Gay people were still referred to by Jesse Holmes as degenerates. This piece reflects the myth of the macho gay man and the division between hypermasculinity and femininity in the gay community. Even in the gay community, we assign gender roles. There's top and bottom, butch and femme, drag queens and drag kings, leathermen and boys, one role dominant, one role submissive. The masculine stereotype causes boys to brutalize each other to establish a hierarchy based on the fear of the feminine. I saw Mark's work when I was an undergrad, and I was blown away by his courageousness and his authenticity. He set the bar pretty high. Jeremy Brooks categorizes his edgy erotic work as homophilia to celebrate, honor, and satirize his experience as a gay man, one who does not often see himself represented within the commercialized depiction of the everyday. He has addressed issues about marriage equality and coming out, and his aim is to piece together some semblance of gay life, culture, and sexuality through altering and collaging the heteronormative stock imagery overwhelmingly present in ceramic decals. See Dancing Queen, she's tearing up the dance floor. While we are not specifically talking about sexuality today, I would like to address this. When people are criticized for being gay, they are often derided because of gender presentations more so than for their sexual preference. Homosexual men are criticized and called effeminate, girly, queens, other names not associated with all things masculine, as if to say the worst thing that any man can be called is a woman. The same is true for a woman presumed to be lesbian. She's called dyke, diesel, butch, other names associated with masculinity. Both are ridiculed more for gender presentation than for any other reason. They're attacked for the way they look, not for who they love. Some definitions. On June 12, 2016, Omar Mateen killed 49 people and wounded 53 others in a hate crime attack in Pulse, a gay nightclub in Orlando, Florida. I made 49 beer bottles for this installation, each representing a life lost. I chose to make beer bottles because for me, it signified the gay bar. The gay bars are a place where many of us found refuge and acceptance. We found our chosen families in a place where we were free to express who we are without the threat of violence or aggression. The attack on Pulse was an attack on that space. It was an attack on our place of acceptance and freedom. I made this piece, one bottle at a time, cast in clay, a fragile material that represents the fragility of life, yet it is also a material that will last thousands of years, demonstrating our powerful will to survive and overcome this tragedy. We will overcome it, and we will definitely remember. Cisgender is a term for people whose gender identity matches the sex that they were assigned at birth, or cis. Transgender, in addition to including those people whose gender identity is the opposite of their assigned sex, trans men and trans women, it may include people who are not exclusively masculine or feminine. It's also used as an umbrella term to include non-binary people. My name is Mac, and I am transgender.
Ow.
I have fought and struggled for years to have the courage to say those words. I came out in 2008 after many years of alcohol and drug addiction and a suicide attempt. 41% of trans individuals attempt suicide. This is part of my story. While being trans is not a choice, being visible and therefore vulnerable is. I do not neatly fit into a box. I have been discouraged in the past from making such controversial work. Odyssey Clayworks in Asheville welcomed me with open arms and created a safe space from which I can tell my story. I do not attempt to speak for all trans people. I speak for myself, even when my voice shakes or cracks like a 12-year-old boy. I medically transitioned in December 2015, shortly after moving to Asheville. Top surgery is the chest reconstruction surgery adopted by some in the trans community to change bodies to better represent the gender they most identify with. It was an out-of-pocket expense not covered by most insurance policies. My chest tattoo states that I am a gender outlaw. This piece represents the beginning of this transition, and it will take some time to correct my posture after years of binding with ace bandages and duct tape, slumping my shoulders to hide my body. I am using sculpture to document my own transition, my struggles, and my experiences. Oh, the bathroom laws. Gender presentation in the LGBT community are under attack in what is already a strikingly different nation under the presidency of number 45. I am addressing the inequalities, prejudices, and fear of differences that people do not understand. The bathroom laws are promoting that fear and injustice. It is why I put myself on display despite my discomfort. It has become my own mission to both educate and inform through my work. These bills sweeping the nation promote discrimination against gay, bisexual, transgender, genderqueer, and intersex people. It catapults transgender people into the spotlight and forces our very private lives into a public dialogue. This piece, a satirical piece about the absurdity of House Bill 2 in North Carolina, places me in the center of that debate. It makes fun of assumptions that many people assume about transgender bodies, about the obsession with our genitalia. Note my birth certificate on the bathroom floor. I currently use the women's restroom because it is where I feel the least threatened. Until the recent laws came into play, I usually went unnoticed in bathroom settings. What these laws have created is a standard for policing gender. We now have people paying very close attention to those who must use a public bathroom. They are looking, actively searching for those who stand out. I stand out. Lots of people under such scrutiny are standing out. North Carolina has lost millions because of our former governor, Pat McCrory's obsession with where people pee. Concerts were canceled and tourism has suffered. Even with the election of our new governor, House Bill 2 remains in place. Policing gender is not a new trend. Since the 1950s, when women could be arrested for not wearing at least 3 pieces of women's clothing, people have been forced into narrow gender constrictions with little room for deviation. Those of us who are masculine females or feminine males are constantly criticized. We need to call these laws what they are, a license to discriminate. Project Canary, Real-Life Repercussions of Politics, is a concept created by the socially engaged Craft Collective. Nicole Gugliotti and Lauren Carl invited me to participate. On their website, on the meaning behind the name, Justice Sonia Sotomayor wrote at length and in the starkest, most personal terms about what it means to be policed in America when you are black or brown. She said, "We must not pretend that the countless people who are routinely targeted by police are isolated. They are the canaries in the coal mine whose deaths, civil and literal, warn us that no one can breathe in this atmosphere. They are the ones who recognize that unlawful police stops corrode all our civil liberties and threaten all our lives. Until their voices matter too, our justice system will continue to be anything but." In this project, we are applying Justice Sotomayor's metaphor of the canary in a coal mine to also include gender, immigration status, reproductive justice, and other human injustices in addition to racial inequity. The goal is to empower those whose voice is often unheard, making politics real. Art objects were made and dropped in public places for people to find them. These objects were marked with a number and a tag that directed the finder to the website www.projectcanary.org, where they could enter the number and read the story that inspired the art. I made the gender-neutral figures into magnets, pins, and keychains, and me and my partner dropped them in bathrooms, rest stops, and gas stations across the country from North Carolina to California, and back again, in response to the bathroom bills.